Hi everyone, it's Matt Phillips with Pro Athlete Advantage. I am excited to bring you a brand new interview with a very special person that, frankly, I'm honored to call a friend. Her name? Tarrah Brandsma. Tarrah is the Executive National Vice President with Arbonne International. Her focus now is on coaching and teaching and training others within Arbonne to create a multi-million-dollar health and wellness business from home. She is a former CPA with Arthur Andersen with the Canterbury Club. She graduated from the University of Texas, and she now resides in Colorado with her husband and 3 wonderful children. I had a tremendous amount of fun sitting with Tarrah and learning from her, and I know that I took a lot away from that interview that I am now going to implement. I know it's going to be the same for you. As you're watching this interview, please, below here, enter a comment on what you learned, what you're going to take away and implement. And now, let me introduce you to the one, the only, Tarrah Brandsma. Tarrah, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you taking the time. It's actually a hop, skip, and jump just from my house over here, so logistically, fairly easy this morning.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you heard a little bit about Tarrah's background. We're going to dive into that here in a little bit, but first, just to tell you a little small world story. So, when I very first met Tarrah, a couple years ago now, we discovered that her family has kind of a long baseball history here in the state of Colorado, where I grew up as well. And it just so happened that as we were talking about the sport of baseball, it came up that when you were at the University of Texas, you worked with the baseball team.
Yeah.
And we found out that we actually were on the same field back in, was it 2000?
Yeah.
Back in 2000, we were standing on the same field, didn't know each other, never would have known each other. But we, when I played at Creighton, we had traveled down to Arizona State to play in a regional. We played against the University of Texas. Tarrah was there. Her dad was in the stands watching the games. We were just talking about how it was ungodly hot. Hot down there. And I believe we lost 1-0 or 2-0 against the University of Texas. So, but you never know whose path you're going to cross and when you're going to cross it in the world. And I mean, 16 years ago, 17 years ago almost, we're standing on the same field. So,
small world.
Very
Crazy.
small world. Very small world. You know, I want to dive into a lot of different areas, and you know, we're going to talk about kind of the mental toughness. We're going to talk about some leadership type stuff, but the whole core is I want to tell your story because I think it's so fascinating. I think we can learn a lot from you. Sure. Your journey through your career in the corporate world, your journey now within Arbonne, I think it's just absolutely fascinating. So. And you're going to hear there's those little ones running around here. I'm going to ask Tarrah about her family in a little bit, but her 2 girls and a boy are milling around up here. So maybe we'll say hi in a little bit. But Tarrah, you know, your background, you came up through kind of public accounting, then you took on a controller role at the Canterbury Club. Tell me about what it was like working in that kind of corporate environment, if we just start there.
Yeah, you know, I think I'd always dreamed of climbing the corporate ladder. I saw my mom do it. She was wildly successful. And, you know, I was really excited in the beginning. And then I think I got to this place in my corporate world where I realized you weren't always paid what you were worth. Or, you know, the harder you worked, it sometimes didn't show up. And so I had a little bit of some misgivings. I still was going to work hard, but I think I was a little disenfranchised with the whole idea of the perfect view I had of corporate America, but I loved it. It seemed that you know, I worked for amazing companies, and a lot of that was a little bit out of my control too. I worked for Arthur Andersen, which was my dream job, and 3 months into it, the Enron debacle happens, and within 9 months after that, we're already at another firm. And so, and the culture there was a little different. And so adjusting to a new culture, it was tough, but you kind of battle and figure out, you know, how am I gonna mesh into this new culture? And then a client asked me to actually come work for them in the industry. And so I went to a client that I loved. And so it was one of those where I, you know, kind of started to carve my path in the corporate world based on kind of what was thrown at me.
Interesting. Yeah, the corporate was interesting because did you have a picture of if I do this and then I do this and I do this, I'm going to be at whatever level. I mean, was that your dream to be like, I'm going to be a partner someday?
Yeah,
Was that the...
for sure. I was totally partner track, and I was following in my mom's footsteps, and she had done that. And, I think you realize there's a lot more factors at play, whether it's, an Enron situation
Yes.
or the economy situation where you work for a year and then comes review time and everybody doesn't get a bonus or a raise, and you're like, you put in all this time and effort, and then you realize, gosh, it wasn't as glorious as it had seemed to be for me. But I still loved I loved what I did. It just wasn't, I realized, I think a few years into it, there had to be more. There had to be more to life to challenge me than, just doing enough to,
Yes.
to kind of move up the ranks in corporate America.
Yes. And how long, when the Enron scandal happened, how long did you stay on in public accounting before making that switch?
A little over a year after that.
Okay.
And I was with Arthur Anderson for about 10 months, and then KPMG for about 6 months. And then
Okay.
my client called a couple times, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to make the leap. And a great opportunity that I kind of grabbed a hold of after pushing it away for a little bit.
Yes. So you go there, you make the switch to the kind of smaller company, but one of your clients that you had a relationship with back in the day when you actually could do that, but the rules have changed a bit now. But tell me what that jump was like, transitioning to kind of a smaller company, I mean, much smaller company.
Yeah, it was a telecommunications company here, and Avaya ended up buying it, so it became part of a conglomerate company. But what I appreciated was, I guess, a little bit more of the, I felt like not so much a cog in a wheel. Like, I felt like in Arthur, I was a piece of the whole puzzle, whereas at a smaller company, I felt like I was making a little bit more of an impact, and I could see that come through in the role I had. And I did like that it wasn't working till midnight, and like I was in public accounting, and the schedule was a little more friendly to enjoying life the way you want to, spending your time. We live in a beautiful state, and spending the time outside or hiking or biking or golfing instead of working till midnight every night. So that was probably the best adjustment, was the schedule change.
Yes.
And the people I loved the people I worked with at Arthur Anderson, and this was another great fit. I learned so much from the people I worked for and with. That it was definitely a very rewarding switch over.
Yeah. Well, I know that's important to you, that kind of time freedom.
Yes.
Being able to spend time with your kids, I know, and I think the other point you bring up is really adding value into what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, or at least feeling like you're adding value.
Right.
And you're helping grow the company, or whatever, achieve the goals of where the company is going, where your department's going, things like that. I know that's very important to you, and so we look at you're going down this accounting path, and all of a sudden, I believe it was your cousin who introduced you to Arbonne and said, "Hey, come to this meeting. I just want to tell you about it, of what I do at this company." And Arbonne is a very, very well-known name. It's been around for a very long time. I imagine a lot of you watching either buy their products or have them sitting in your house. But tell me about that first meeting. Why did you even go to it?
Right. I think I went because I was supporting her, and she just asked me to come take a peek, and she was fairly new to starting this new business venture, and I trusted her, and it was one of those things where I just went on those two factors. I was supporting her, and I trusted her, and I was intrigued a little bit about what she was doing. I honestly thought she was a little crazy too, starting this business from home where it didn't seem like something she would do, but that's what intrigued me about it too, is I knew she wanted more choices. With her, she was a director at a semi-private golf club here in the area, which great job, just not in the summertime. You're there sun up to sundown. You got to be there for the members and
Yes.
and getting new members on board. And so she also realized, you know, maybe there's a little bit more to life. Yeah, I have a great career path, but you know, I want to enjoy my summers a little bit more than she was. And so I went to kind of just check out what she was doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Intrigued.
And very
curious.
intrigued. Yep.
Was it the support or was it the intrigue behind of like, were you asking yourself, what if?
Yeah.
A little bit?
I think once I found out more information about what was possible, I think I was just always ingrained that you work really hard, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you land your, you know, you start your career, and then you go down this path, this same path that, you know, you think you're gonna do, and then you realize maybe there's more out there. Maybe there's something where I can work half the hours but make the same, if not more, and have that possibility to choose my hours instead of driving into an office and being there for a set amount of time just because I needed to be there for that set amount of time. So the idea of the flexibility, the time freedom, but also not sacrificing that financial stability as well. Coming from an accountant,
Right.
anything risk was not my, you know, I was not going to go like quit my job and start a business because I'm just super risk adverse, but this seemed doable. It was part-time in addition to what I was currently doing. So I was definitely intrigued after I heard more about the possibilities that were out there.
Interesting. Well, that's one thing I want to come back to a little bit as well, because, you know, I've heard this one speaker talk about having a curious mindset,
Mm-hmm.
just being curious and asking questions. And when you have those thoughts bubble up of, you know, asking that question, you know, what more do you have? What other information's out there? What can I learn about this? And not saying you have to go down a certain path
Right.
or not, but just having that mindset of like, that's interesting.
Right.
I'd like to find out a little more about
Right.
that. Which you took that step, and then we'll get to where you're at today. But you go to that first meeting. You're now more curious about it. What was the next? What was the next thing you did?
The next was kind of doing our due diligence. And my husband and I are both auditors, so when you look at a new business, you kind of want to dig into what does this really look like. And to be honest, you know, Arbonne's in the network marketing space or the network marketing industry, and I knew not. I thought I knew what that was, but I didn't know. So the curious mind in me said, instead of just shutting down, you know, the opportunity because I didn't know, I wanted to find out more information about what did this industry look like.
Yes.
And when you kind of, you know, when you have that kind of like, I don't know, you kind of go with your gut. When you feel something, you're like, instead of just shutting it down, you at least want to find out more information. And so we did our due diligence, and we found out it was a brilliant way to distribute a product, just in terms of cost savings, middlemen. And I saw success everywhere around me. I was introduced to women that had, you know, stepped away from their full-time careers as, you know, a TV news anchor, and husbands that were now following their passions instead of working behind their corporate desk because the income had grown to allow them both to have choices. And
Yes.
that's what really stirred up inside of me. I loved accounting. My husband's way more normal. He is like, this is not the most glamorous career to have, and he had shoved his passions kind of under the rug because invest in teenagers, potentially be a teacher, because the income gap between a teacher and a CPA is just a little different. So
Yes.
when I heard that possibility was out there for me to have more choices and him maybe to have more choices to follow his passions, something stirred up inside of me big time to say, you know, maybe this is worth a shot. And we didn't know everything about what I was getting into, but you know, it's kind of, I read this great quote recently. It said, it's about, you know, stepping out on faith. And I'd never read it this way before, but it said, you know, stepping out on faith is stepping out on a limb, cutting it off, and watching the tree fall. It's where you're like, I'm going to step out and know what is possible, even though you don't know how that's going to all transpire. And so, although we didn't know all the information, we knew enough to say, and my husband looked at me, he's like, I don't see what you have to lose. Give this opportunity a chance. And so our lives would look drastically different had we not kind of followed that tug. to say, just give it a go. There's not much here to lose. So,
Yes. Well, it's interesting because you gathered the information, you made a risk assessment of it, right? Did you have a spreadsheet? Did you have
my husband probably did.
He probably did, okay.
He's the spreadsheet guy in the family. You'll ask him, he probably did.
I will ask him. You should frame it if you do.
Totally,
as like, this was the spreadsheet to make the decision. One kind of classic story about you that the Arbonne community has heard, and I've had the pleasure to understand a little bit about. You didn't like really being in front of people at all, to put it very bluntly, right?
I couldn't even pick up the phone to order pizza. That's how I did not like talking to people I didn't know. And so, and speaking in front of people was definitely probably my biggest fear when I started was getting in front of people and being vulnerable and doing something that I didn't know much about, and that was very unknown to me. But yeah, that was definitely me in the beginning.
So think about this, everybody. She couldn't do it. She didn't like picking up the phone to order a pizza. And now she's jumping into a role where the way you start an Arbonne business, this is, again, I'm not in the business, but as you start having parties and you start speaking in front of people and interacting with people that you may know a couple individuals in the room, but you really don't know anybody.
Right.
What made you do that? How did you do that?
It's step by step. You start out in front of, I thankfully I had mentors showing me the way, and they're kind of locking arms with me in the beginning. And then once they had said, okay, Tarrah, we're kicking you out of the nest, I just failed forward with it. I was not, the first presentation I did, my voice shook, my hand shook, and a girl decided to join me in this journey. And what I love about that is, I think in what I've learned in, my journey in Arbonne, is that it's great to be vulnerable. It's great to be you, and people are attracted to that. They're attracted to like who you are, and the fact that I didn't have to be perfect in what I was doing inspired someone else to say, well, maybe I could do something like this. Maybe I don't have to work a 60-hour work week, for the rest of my life. And so that girl is one of my top leaders on my team. And it was the first presentation I had to do by myself, and it was not pretty. I think she even told me, if that's all you have to do, I'm doing this with you. And so
take that as a compliment.
Right,
Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
And so anyway, I think it was step by step, speaking in front of 3 to 4 people, and then it ended up turning into a training in front of 100 people, and then it would turn into a training in front of 2,000 people, and now I've spoken in front of 14,000 people. And it's so funny how I just feel like God kind of puts you in these places to really grow you, to grow the skills that you don't think you have, but by baby stepping it through, you develop skills that sometimes become your most favorite. Like that's one of my one of my favorite moments now is being on a stage, and if I can inspire one person through my story of imperfection and of just doing it, and even when it didn't look pretty, or even when it seemed hard, or when I was up against a wall, to me that's way more inspiring than than something that looks perfect and a perfect journey along the way.
Yes, we all have our faults. We all have things that hold us back. You talk about mentors guiding you at the start. What sort of things did they teach you? Did they inspire in you? Who's maybe one person that sticks out as like, this person was? There's probably many. I apologize. Not to offend everyone watching, right. but who is that? Maybe that person. How do they guide you along at the start?
I've had so many, and they've all played different roles. Even from my cousin just being bold enough to ask when she could have looked at me and said, "There's no way Tarrah would do this. I love my job. I made a great income. I wasn't a product girl. It didn't look like this would." She was bold enough to say, "Hey," and share it with me, because she saw my potential, which I think was pretty awesome. She saw the potential in me even before I saw that potential in me. But some of the top leaders in Arbonne, I think what I've learned through Arbonne, the skills, my husband will say, the person I've become through the process is probably his most favorite thing, besides, the financial aspect and all the trips we've gotten to go on, and it's the people, like Cecilia Stoll's one that I just saw her share, you know, from a stage, you know, her journey, and, you know, from a place of, you know, not being able to pay a $200 cell phone bill to talk to her mom back in Brazil, and to know that the possibility was huge. And so I started to dream bigger. I started to set big goals. I started to dive into personal growth and understand that, you know, sometimes what you might consider a failure is actually a learning moment that's going to set you up for your next big comeback. And so, so much of it, like, to me, 90% of what I've learned is mindset, like being grateful, you know, just so many pieces of this journey have been modeled by my mentors, and I'm super passionate about people finding mentors, and because I think you know, you wanna, if you wanna get to that next place, you've got to have someone that's gone before you to kind of learn from either their mistakes or their successes. And yeah, Cecilia Stoll, she lives in Oklahoma. She's been a top leader, but her journey, I think I related to her. She didn't like speaking in front of people, you know, she thought she had a weird accent because she's from Brazil, you know, and so all these things that could play into, I just learned so much from her, and I related to her story that I felt like, okay, if this woman can be successful in this, maybe I can too.
It's planting the belief. I think the mentor thing is huge because those people who've walked the path before. I just had a coffee yesterday with a gentleman who's been in the industry I'm in for the past 25 years. And just the opportunity to sit down and hear what they've went through, what roadblocks they've experienced, how they push through them. Not saying necessarily I'm going to follow the same path,
right,
but it's information.
Right.
To your point of how do I learn about this, and how
right,
do I keep engaging and falling forward?
Right.
As you eloquently said a little bit earlier. Does Arbonne have a formula, a process to follow when you start out?
Yep, it's we always say, you know, when you follow the system, you cannot fail. But I think so, especially starting out, we want to choose the pieces that are easy and that feel comfortable. And so stepping out of that comfort zone, and the first 4 months of my business were me not following the system. I was trying to do it my way, and you know, I learned through that process. But when I finally really attached myself to my mentors and said, okay, I'll be coachable, tell me what I need to do to move forward. But most of the stuff I wasn't willing to do in those first 4 months was the stuff that was uncomfortable to me. And I almost quit in month 4 to say, this isn't for me, this is hard, it's not really moving where I think it should be moving, or I'm not hearing the responses I think I'm supposed to be hearing. And so thankfully I knew I hadn't given this enough time. I had not grown into the person I needed to be to do this type of business. I'm eternally grateful that I pressed on through that hardship.
Yes.
And really did start to really follow the system. And you know, and that's what I love is, again, my leaders and mentors would always say, let my hindsight be your foresight. Like, let all those, like, kind of to
yes,
your mentor that you met with, you may not follow that path, but now you may not go down that path because you heard a story, you know, of where, you know, he may have tried something and it wasn't super successful, that you're
yes,
like, okay, I'm not, that idea was swirling in my head, but I'm not going to go down that path now because
yes,
I've known that didn't work before, you know. So
what was the most uncomfortable thing you had to do when you at that 4 month mark?
you know, in our role, we just need to get in front of people, and typically it's in a group setting, whether, you know, a workshop, a group presentation, and usually in someone's home. It can be in a coffee shop, but it was really building a network. And, you know, I only know a certain amount of people. Thank goodness for social media now, because I feel like we know a lot more people now. But
right.
Back then we didn't have social media, and so it was really just asking the people closest to me, will you help me out? And that was so counterintuitive to the strong corporate woman I had been, that where I can do it all, I can, you know, I to be vulnerable and ask for help was
yes,
not where I wanted to be. And so once I finally said, hey, would you be willing to help me out and get me in front of a few people just so I can get practice and help continue to build my network. It was amazing to me, first of all, when I presented that more authentically about this is really what I'm asking for. People responded way more positively than me trying to hype up what I was doing. I didn't want to be vulnerable and ask for help, so I hyped up what Arbonne was and what the products were about, and really it was more about, hey, can you help me out and get me in front of some people? My network was like, yeah, how do I do? What do I need to do? So it was really being vulnerable about really and authentic with what I was really asking for.
Well, that's a really interesting point, actually, because and as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of just like if you're in the corporate world, or if you're in a position with a company like Arbonne, or if you're in school, it's how do you ask for help, and are you willing to do it, and then how do you do it, and are you able to almost have that humility to be able to say, like, I need your help. I cannot do this alone.
Right.
And yes, the products are great in this case, right? Yes, the products are great. I'm telling you, they're awesome.
Right.
But almost forget that for now.
Right.
I need your help to do this.
Right.
And I think back to like even my career, like when you thought, I really like that. When I think about my career, I wanted to switch from accounting to finance or operations. Well, there's a process you need to follow to do that, because that's a rare thing.
Right.
I think it's rare because people don't ask. And so I set this process up just to ask people for help and find out what they did. And that's all I wanted. There was no agenda. It was not like, I need a job, or buy this, buy this, buy this. It was just like, I need your help. I just want a different perspective, things like that. So like that's a huge thing to ask, just to see, can you be humble enough, set your ego aside just to ask for help. And I don't care if you're in a career or you work for a company like Arbonne, or you're with Arbonne. Who do you need to ask for help, and what can you ask, and what simple thing can you ask for them? Because I find, and maybe you found this too, I'd be curious in your opinion, what I found is typically people want to help. They really do.
Right.
Every situation in life, they're like, please let me help you.
Totally.
Right?
Oh yeah, that's now how I train my team. I'm like, learn from my, me trying to be this proud corporate, I can do it all girl. And I was like, the funny thing is if someone's would ask me for help, I'd offer it immediately. I'd be like, yes, what do you need? But then I wasn't willing to ask for the help. And so it was so funny. I knew once I figured this out, I'm like, I know there's people willing out there to help me out. It's super simple, and people want to do that. And you realize you actually see the good in people, right? When you're like, oh, there are people out there that are, that want to support you in this journey. And when you have that shift, and all of a sudden people respond in the way that you see them, you're seeing the goodness in them. They're, they're giving spirit, and all of a sudden you're like, oh,
yes,
they're responding the way, that they want to respond.
Yes. Well, I'm the same way as you. If people ask me for help, I'm like, absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely. What do you need? What do you need? I'll do it right now. I'll bend over backwards for you. Like, what can we do? The thing that's interesting about you, though, is when you got to that 4-month mark, you made the decision, you started asking for help. Advice started coming. Did it start coming more frequently? Did it become easier to ask? Or was it a process where you asked and pulled back a little bit, and then it got easier? How did you work through that?
I got too quick. Yeah, I could totally help you out from people I probably should have asked 4 months earlier, because they were like the four people that would help me change a tire if I was stuck on the side of the road. Yes. So I felt confident, and then I started to be a little bit bolder about what the potential I saw in this opportunity with people. And my friend that saw me do my presentation, or I fumbled a little through it, I was like, you'd be amazing at this. So I started to see, I kind of took myself out of the equation of, because that can be tricky in what I do is, I had to take my success the more people I help, the more successful I can be.
Yes.
But you can't be successful if you aren't willing to invest in others. So I knew it's like this weird kind of tricky road to navigate. But when I finally removed myself from the equation and saw people and be like, you could be wildly successful at this, it was, again, I think I saw, and that was, I was being coached to remove yourself from this. Don't, you're here to invest in others. Can you help develop leaders? And I was like, okay, that feels empowering to me. And when I really realized that I could empower others through this opportunity, it became easier, but it was never. I still will prefer to order my pizza on an app than pick up the phone and call. And so there's still a little bit of, it never goes away entirely, but it's much easier to face. And I would say it was, there were still some hard no's in there, but I just knew that was kind of part of the process. They weren't saying no to me, they were saying no to what I was presenting to them, which made it much easier for me to deal with the no.
So I think it's interesting, you talked about a couple things. One was when you got the no's, because that can be a big thing in every area of life, right, where you get rejected. Mm-hmm. And how do you detach yourself, or how do you deal with that just based on the situation you're in? So I thought that was an interesting point you brought up about how you separated them saying no to you versus them saying no to just this opportunity.
Right. So
you didn't, not saying you didn't take it personally, but I guess the question is, did you take it personally, or?
It depended, and it kind of still depends. I don't see as much of that anymore, but there were times I took it personally, and again, great coaching. I would hear that, that no means not now, or they don't know enough about what you're presenting. And so I lived in the not now place, that maybe later they'd be willing to help me out, or maybe later, life will change and they're looking for an opportunity like this, or, they're fed up with their products, or, I just knew not, so that was easier to live in than, that this is about me. And so, just having that coaching of that, how to switch my mindset, because that truly is, like how I think about that no was going to correlate how I felt about that no. And so having tools in my toolbox to be like, no, this is how you have to look at it. It got much easier the more I just asked and processed through those, to know that it really wasn't about me. It was more about the information I was sharing with them. That's
interesting, because I think that's a key point, like shifting that mindset, and it's going from something that can be perceived as negative, mm-hmm. which it is negative, right? Nobody wants to hear a no. I mean, I don't like hearing no's, but taking a no and saying, okay, what do I do with this? How do I process it? How do I almost switch it from negative to positive?
Right.
And it sounds like Arbonne does a good job of helping provide those tools, right? And I know your husband, and I know the support he provides, and your brother, and your dad, and all that stuff, and but be able to shift that to say, well, no, this is not what they're saying. They're saying this. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to hang on to. I'm going to make this positive. I'm going to force it.
Right.
And I heard this stat the other day when I was talking to a friend, that there's 4,000 words in the English language that have emotion attached to them. And 3,600 of them are negative.
Right.
So you look at that and just do the math. 10% is positive, 90% is negative.
Right.
So point being, negativity is all around us.
Right.
So when we get those rejections, it could be you proposing a project at work.
Right.
It could be you, I don't know, asking a girl or a guy on a date. I don't know, right?
Totally.
But it's everything. You take that rejection and say, well, what do I learn from this? How do I make this a positive? I'm going to force it, but you have to, at certain times, force it.
Right.
You have to force it
sure.
to work your way through it, and then it becomes easier.
Right.
And a little bit easier, and a little bit easier.
You build the habit. Yeah.
You're building the habits.
Yep. Someone always told me, tell yourself a story that serves you. And there's a lot of times you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Road rage, you're driving, someone cuts you off, someone said, well, you don't know what's going on. Tell yourself a story that makes you feel good. Oh my gosh, that guy must be rushing his wife to the hospital, they're having a baby, instead of being like, oh, that jerk just cut me off. Like, either way, you don't know. It's not, what you think or do is not going to affect that car that just cut you off. So tell yourself a story that serves you if you don't know what's going behind the scenes. And so, if that guy, I'm going to feel much better about that car cutting me off if he's rushing his wife to the hospital. Then
that's very true.
So that's a place I've lived in, and I always try to see the best in that situation and really train my brain to say, okay, what's the best case scenario here that makes me feel good, and and it's because either I spiral out and then I'm angry my whole drive down down the highway or whatever, or I'm like, oh, okay, on with my day.
Right.
So it's so much training your brain to think the thoughts and, assume best intentions. And
Yes.
but it's a habit for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. Repetition.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because, we talked on the phone a couple days ago before this, and what I tell people all the time is like this mental toughness word, right? And you've heard my definition of it. I'll go through it here in a minute because I want to get your perspective on a couple of things. But mental toughness is not a magic pill. This stuff's not going away. We're going to lose our confidence at certain points. We're going to be frustrated during times in our life. But when you start forming those habits and training your brain, you snap back faster.
For sure.
Right? So you go from negative to positive a heck of a lot faster. And when you keep it up, it becomes faster and faster and faster every time. And I remember I used to watch my favorite football team play, and they'd lose, and I'd be like depressed for like a day. And then my wife would not be too happy with me. And now it's to the point of minutes, and it's fine.
Right.
Because what am I going to do about a football game?
Right.
Really?
Right.
How does that impact me? But that repetition, and I appreciate that part of your story of how you kind of forced it, relied on those coaches sometimes.
I had to.
Yeah. Exactly. That's pretty wild. What are you reading a book right now?
I am.
What
I
book
read
are you
lots
reading?
of books.
What book are you reading?
It's called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson. It's kind of the sequel, I guess, to, he wrote a book now, and I'm going to totally butcher the name, but it's in a pit with a lion on a snowy day, and it's about Benaiah who chases down a lion, which is so counterintuitive. So it's about kind of chasing down your dreams, and really just how you do that, and how you dream, go out and dream big dreams and do things that seem so counterintuitive to our culture, or what's even possible, and just continue to go down that path. It's a great book. I read all the time.
So Chase the Lion. I'll put that in some of the interview notes too.
That's good.
So people can check it out. You're reading that now. What's probably the biggest book that's had an impact lately that sticks out in your mind?
Gosh, I could go through a million of them. I'll say two. In the early stages of my journey, I got to hear Jack Canfield speak, who he wrote all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books with Mark Hansen, and he wrote this book called The Success Principles, and it's kind of a pretty hefty book, but these small chapters. And what I loved is you hear about the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy, takes his fried chicken recipe to 1,000 people, and here's 1,000 no's before he ever sells his recipe. You hear these stories of, how to set goals, how to have big vision, how to face obstacles, how to, act when you don't feel like it, face your fears, but do it anyway. So there were so many little nuggets in there, and I learned so much from stories, and that I loved that book where I could relate to that stuff. And I most recently I kind of have I'm just like absorbing every piece of leadership training I can get right now, because a big piece of what I do is build leaders, and so
Yes.
how can I make sure they're also engaging and building their leadership skills. And so one of the ones I've just finished recently is launching a leadership revolution. I forget the author, Oren maybe, but it's a fantastic just overview of how you build upon all the levels of leadership that John Maxwell talks about. And so
Yes.
that's another one that's more current for me, but I could spend 3 hours talking about all the books that have impacted my life.
I love it. Yeah, we're gonna do another one. We'll just talk books the whole time. Compare, come up with a list.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
Some good ones. You seem like an avid learner. Why is that important?
I think you can get to a place, and I've felt this in what I do, where my business is a well-oiled machine, and so I could get stagnant, but then I really realized that if I do that, then how is that, I'm the leader people are looking up to. I need to continue to learn and grow, and it keeps my head in, I feel like when I've been stagnant, then that's when I start to see those habits that I've created start to kind of go backwards, and I'll find myself being more negative or less grateful for things, and so to me it's just a muscle that you want to exercise all the time, and it's like another habit. It's just ingrained in me. And anytime I kind of get in a funk, I'll ask myself, what are you reading, Tarrah? And usually it's nothing. It's usually like, oh, you're not reading right now. And I can feel that show up in how I feel. So I love learning. I love hearing people's stories. A lot of it I'm passing down to my kids, the things they, think and say to themselves. And, it's really cool to see that I'm helping them create these habits in a roundabout way through the things I've learned, which is setting them up to, have those tools, even next week, potentially, when they're faced with a tough situation. So
that's true. And that's like just listening to you talk about, because just knowing your journey, and you're a gunner, right? So translated the passionate, want to make a difference in the world. And it's almost like you started Arbonne, you said, well, what if? Mm-hmm. And then you got into it, I can make a difference, or I can do some really cool things, and then you kept growing it, and it's almost like when you're reading these books, it's like, wow, they did that. Mm-hmm. It's almost fuel for, why can't I do that?
Right.
Or what part of their story can I take and implement and do that?
100%.
So I like the way you phrased it though, because it's when you feel yourself start slipping back in those habits, you're not learning.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And as soon as you step in and start reading or listening to a podcast or doing
mm-hmm.
something, you're learning, your mind's active again. You're saying, how do I move the needle once more?
Yeah, for sure.
Gosh, I know you've been spinning yours like crazy over the past couple of years. Why do you do Arbonne?
Now? Why do I do
Arbonne? Why?
Well, I'm super passionate about the thing with Arbonne is I didn't wash my face before Arbonne. Our best line when I was introduced to Arbonne was an anti-aging skincare, which it still is our best seller, and I use it every day now.
Right.
I'm reversed in the hands of time every day. I wash my face.
That's right.
We have nutrition products that are phenomenal, and the ethos of the company is great, and it's always ahead of the game. It's what people are looking for.
Yes.
But it was never about the products. It was about this vehicle that could allow me to pursue. And one of the big whys was to have more of that time freedom for both myself and my husband.
Yes.
He's diving into following his passions now because of Arbonne. But really why I do it now is people ask me this, like, why are you still doing? And I'm like, because if I've had the opportunity to have these choices, and my choices are going to look different from the next girl or guy,
Yes.
down. But if I've had these choices and I've had people that have taught and trained me and linked arms with me and, showed me the way, I don't want to stop until everybody that wants to realize those choices for themselves as well. Like I want everybody to have the choices I've had and to see them grow in the way I felt like I've grown personally, and have the opportunities to be stretched, and the abundance just kind of chasing them, and time, and financially, and with their health. And so really I just love empowering other people to be the best version of themselves. And this is an avenue because it's not always easy, but I feel like you become the best version when you figure out how am I going to deal with different situations, some that aren't easy, some that are easy. And so I love the empowerment piece of this.
It's your legacy.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's
within
crazy.
the company, but well beyond.
Right.
With people I know, personally, people you interact with, your children, it's purpose. This is your legacy,
right.
of what you get to do every day.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's so fun.
That's fun.
Right.
That's a higher purpose.
For sure.
Than doing debits and credits.
Right. Oh, 100%.
Or that's a higher purpose than just selling a product. Not discounting anything, but
right. 100%.
but it's a higher purpose to be like, this is a vehicle to open up opportunities, even with the products for health, for
right.
fitness, all that stuff, but beyond, well
right.
beyond.
You hit it spot on, because it is, you see yourself making an impact, generate, like, people you don't even know send you notes and say thank you for, staying the course, or thank you for not quitting, or thank you, and you realize gosh, had I made that choice to quit 4 months into my business, like
Yes.
how would that legacy have turned out, right? And so it's just, it's, you hit it spot on.
I love it. I love it. I just have a couple more questions for you. I want to be aware of your time. What time do you wake up? These are kind of random questions, but what time do you wake up in the morning?
It depends. I try to get up fairly early so I can do some stuff. This morning I got up at 4:30 to go work out. That doesn't happen every morning. That's usually like 2 mornings a week. But I would say, you know, there's mornings I sleep in, so I allow myself, and I'm huge on giving yourself grace too. Like, you know, not beating yourself up and going down that path where then you feel horrible all day because you know, slept in one day. So I would say my goal is to get up. I'll do some coaching calls at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and you know, but I would say most of the mornings around 6:30 or 7.
Okay. When you do get up, I mean, it sounds like you've got certain routines that you go through, like some of the coaching calls, stuff like that, but how do you kind of set up your schedule and week, and are there certain routines you follow that kind of repeat over and over again?
Yes. One thing my husband and I have always done, even we kind of learned this right before Arbonne kind of came into play, was we do planning meetings. And so for our relationship, if we're not on the same page as with our calendars, that's when things can get a little heated, and we're like, oh, you didn't tell me that in 2 hours you have this, you know. And so
That's right.
for that has helped, you know, us in a journey where he's a high school basketball coach.
Yes.
And you know, I do stuff in the evenings. I may have to travel a little, and so really understanding what our schedules look like help us prepare for that. But one of the things that has, again, something I think I've read in a book or heard from one of my mentors was, you know, being very intentional about what you want to accomplish that day. And so I got in this habit of writing the 6 things I wanted to do the next day for my business. The 6 most important things I'd write the night before so that I was prepared when I woke up in the next morning, say, oh, I need to follow up, you know, with you know, this woman, or I need to, you know,
Yes.
do a coaching call. So it was the 6 things I needed to do that day. And gosh, I read another great book, which isn't a typical one, but it's called The One Thing. And it talks about, with whatever endeavor you do, ask yourself, you know, whether it's when you wake up in the morning or at the beginning of the week, what's the one thing I need to do this week that makes everything else unnecessary or simpler? And so I looked back at how I built my Arbonne journey. I was like, 100%. I knew I needed to get in front of people and put appointments on my calendar. And so when I wrote out my list of 6, it always revolved around not filing papers or not, you know, organizing my files. It was booking stuff on my calendar. It was like that was my one thing. And so great book to really kind of, if you're the time management piece of it.
Yes.
But that's kind of, I would say, I just have gotten in a routine of making sure I need to do that.
Yes.
You know, and just check that off, and then I feel great about the rest of my day. I don't, you know, wallow in feeling miserable because I haven't done
You should
anything.
be doing this,
Yes.
or should be doing
Yes.
that.
So you think about it a lot more if you're not doing it than just doing it and getting it off. Like I remember
That's true.
I'm thinking a lot more about my business. I feel like I'm doing it all the time, but I wasn't, because I was
That's
just
true.
thinking about it. So
That's a good point. And focused on the value,
Right.
like what's driving value.
Right.
So if you're filing papers, it almost goes back to your what's comfortable versus what's uncomfortable.
Right.
A little bit.
Way
which
more
I know it's
comfortable to file papers.
Yeah, it's cool to be by yourself, putting stuff away.
stickers on them.
But yeah, but ultimately having that mindset of like what's driving value. That's a good practice that for everybody watching too, like write down your 6 things that you need to do the next day. Because one thing, the reason I asked you kind of what time you get up in the morning, stuff like that, is like typically our heads are clear right after we slept. Our energy is the highest when we wake up. So what are you accomplishing right off the bat? Because when 3-4 hits, I know some people are, I don't know,
Opposite.
opposite. But when your energy is the highest, how are you taking advantage of that time and that opportunity
Right.
that you have?
Right, 100%. Your day can get away from you if you run it like,
Yes,
you gotta get everything, you know, you
that's true.
lose sight of what you need to get done when your day starts to hit you
Yes.
head on.
Yes. Those couple days in the morning when you get up and work out,
Oh, they're
where
my
do you go?
favorite
You go to the
days.
gym? Do you go
Right.
just a gym
Orange Theory.
with weights? Orange
Yeah.
Theory. Okay.
Hour workout, and it's like I wish I did, I don't know why I don't do it every day, because I get home at 6, I have an hour
Yes.
before my kids get up. I get way more stuff done. I feel amazing the whole day. So it's funny, there's so much science about getting
Yes.
up earlier. And
Yes.
I've challenged myself on that on several occasions. And when I do it, I can totally see a difference in how more productive I am and my
Yes.
state of mind.
I think it's, look good, feel good, look good type stuff.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea person?
Well,
Tea this morning.
Tea. I am usually a coffee person, but I felt a little handcuffed to Starbucks where I'm like, gotta go every day, maybe twice a day. And I just did not feel good, but it was coffee, milk, vanilla syrup. So a lot of it would make me feel not so good in the afternoon. So the last month or so, I've not done any coffee. So, but
That's very
I
good.
love the smell of coffee and I love the taste of coffee.
Yes. What kind of tea do you typically drink?
Usually green tea.
Okay. I'm the same. I've been doing it.
Arbonne Detox tea would be a plug for the product.
Go buy it. Go buy it. Arbonne Detox tea. Okay. And your Arbonne cup.
And the Arbonne cup.
And buy one of those too. Talk to me about the importance that like nutrition has had on your performance.
Oh goodness, incredible. One of the things that is fairly new to Arbonne is a nutrition program where we're taught to eat cleaner, and we teach people how to, sugar was, anytime I got hungry, I'd want to reach for bread or something sugary, a cookie, a granola bar that was, chock full of sugar, and my energy levels would just, it was this roller coaster ride and so thankfully through Arbonne, and there's lots of avenues out there, but 30 days I cut out all this, I cut out coffee, I cut out sugar, I cut out gluten and dairy, and goodness, who knew dairy? Dairy was one that actually probably affected me the most, but what I loved about that is I used to drink Dr. Pepper, 3 or 4 a day, and since I cut them out for just 30 days, I couldn't even go back because it really changed my taste buds. And so not putting that amount of just sugar and soda in my body, I felt better. My energy levels up. My weight doesn't fluctuate because of, because I'm always grabbing for something sugary.
Yes.
I don't do that anymore. And so a big role. And that would have been one, in honesty, that I kind of held up my hand to Arbonne's nutrition because I thankfully have a good metabolism and could eat what I wanted to, but my energy level, I didn't gain the weight, but I could see it affect my energy level, my state of mind, my sleeping patterns. There were so many things that changed when I started to just make minor changes to how I was eating. And my family eats entirely different because of it.
Yes.
So, it's a big role, and I wouldn't have thought that 3-4 years ago.
Right. Well, it's huge, and you know what my wife does, what Shannon does with her nutrition business, but you can't discount the importance of what you put in your mouth, and even what you put on your skin,
Right.
as far as how that's impacting your performance and your mindset, just like you talked about.
For
It's like when
sure.
your body feels good, your mind's typically clearer.
Yeah.
You can go on a bit longer.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah. My trainer's always like, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So people are working out, and then they go fuel with just, crap, and then you don't ever get that feeling you think you're going to get when you exercise, because you refuel with stuff that's totally negating the effect of what you just did.
Yes.
So,
Love it.
Shannon and I are definitely on the same
Yeah, I know you guys. Yeah, I know you are. Let me ask just a couple more questions here. Been so nice to give me your time this morning. How did your mom impact who you are today?
She would have been one of the mentors or role models that played a big part in. It's funny because I was following in her footsteps. She was partnered at a public accounting firm, CEO, CFO of different companies, and really modeled the work ethic.
Yes.
And her willingness to try to make it all. She was there for us as kids, but also, to probably the detriment of her health, would, pull all-nighters to get everything done. The commitment, true commitment to what she was doing.
Yes.
And so I was following in those footsteps, and then she ended up starting her own business she was doing very well in the corporate world, and she decided, you know what, I should do this for myself, because I'm giving a lot over to the company I work for, and that was a tough risk to take at the age of 56. And she started that, and I saw, okay, wow, you step out on faith.
Yes.
You go for something, even though it may seem a little scary, especially as you're heading into retirement. And it's what, it was what fueled their retirement. And it's funny, when I started my Arbonne business, she was not supportive, because this was not traditional. It was not, she's like, wait, no, you're going down this path, stay on that path. And so I had to kind of prove it to her. So for the kind of the critics and the naysayers of, because I definitely had plenty of those in the early stages of my business, I wouldn't talk to them about Arbonne. I would change the subject, because I didn't want any negative, like, head trash getting in my head about what other people thought. And so, but, she passed away 3 years ago, and it's so funny, I typically would always need business advice from her, but in my Arbonne journey, I didn't seek that out, because I didn't want her advice on the business side. I just needed childcare, and she helped me immensely, and I'm so grateful for that. I would have never seen that coming, because there were times where I'm like, is this worth it? I'm driving down to my parents' house, my kids are going to watch them while I go do an appointment, come back, pick them up. And in hindsight, it was one of my biggest blessings in this business, because where it seemed like a challenge, or it didn't, it ended up turning into, my kids got a lot of time with their grandma before she passed away, so they had the most wonderful memories. And so again, when it seemed like this was so not worth it, it was worth it in every sense of the word, because they got quality one-on-one time with my mom, because I had to go off and do my appointments, do my presentations. And so she was a huge role model as a working, woman. And I think what I really wanted out of that too was the success that she had, but also I wanted more flexibility, because that's one thing she didn't have, is she worked all the time, did very well, but she just didn't get to enjoy life the way she wanted to, because she was working a lot. So
that's pretty powerful. It's like you got blessings in disguise.
Totally.
That you don't see at the time, but you look back and you're like, wow, that was tremendous.
Yeah.
Well, I know she had a drive. I know you get that. Well, your dad is the same way. But I know you've got a drive and a passion. But the cool thing is too, the path you were on, you were aware, and you noticed things. And even about your mom, saying, wow, she's a hard worker, awesome, 2 thumbs up to you, Mom. But that's not what I believe my path is meant to be. And I want to go create something different, and have a little, write your own story. That's what it is. It's just writing your own story.
Say that all the time. You and I are on the same page.
You go along with this one. All right, so two questions left. Then I'll ask for some information from you. But when I talk about mental toughness, we talked about this a little on the phone. The way I kind of define it, it's Matt Phillips' world, not the perfect thing, but we all have our definitions. But I talk about confidence, focus, control, and that means that emotional control piece, and then kind of that persistence or perseverance piece. Those are kind of the 4 elements I break it into, and that's how I go out and teach people. And when I'm working one-on-one with people, I'm teaching the tools to help build the confidence and focus and emotional control, and then help you persevere, right? As you kind of hear those 4 elements, and I'm gonna make you kind of default to Matt's world for a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
What one just sticks out at you, based on the journey you've been on? And it could be multiple, but what one sticks out that you're like, I don't know, this is one I'm just super passionate about and that I've had to work on, or whatever, right? What?
I would say there's 2 that spoke, really jumped out at me. First is confidence. I feel like confidence plays such a huge role in whatever people are doing, and a lot of times that confidence comes from just doing and learning the skills, and knowing that you're not going to be perfect the first time you step out on a court, or the first time you have to run a board meeting, or have to stand up in front of 300 people and speak. It's the confidence comes from doing and knowing that it's okay if it wasn't perfect. You learn from that experience. And so I'm super passionate with my organization. We have, in our system, people are like, well, how long do I teach and how long do I stick with someone that's new to this business? And, my rule of thumb is I'm like, well, where's their confidence at? If they're not confident, you need to make sure you're still investing in them to show them what they're doing right and how, in building that confidence, because when you're confident, you're way more effective. And so that one's a big one for me. And so the second one would be the quality would be persistence. I love stories of people who persevere and, when they're up against a wall, instead of retreating, they figure out, how do I get around it? And I've seen that in my business so many times where, there will be people that go fast or they'll achieve success sooner than, in our business, you can earn a white Mercedes. And I've seen people do that in 9 months, and that's replacement income for most incomes out there. And so, but I'll tell you what inspires the masses are the people that it takes longer and they persist and they see the struggles. I think more people can relate to that kind of story. So I love to edify and support the stories of persistence, because those to me are when really people decide, do I quit something that has been that I committed to, or do I keep pressing forward even though it feels hard?
Yes.
I love those. That's one of my favorites. And not only my own story, but in others as well.
Yes. Well, and the thing I want you all to learn from Tarrah, and I learn, this is why I love doing this, because I learn from our conversation too, and I'm all fired up and excited now. So, but there's so much that sticks out to me, and I just want to talk about a couple things, because I think the persistence is a huge thing, like taking step by step by step, and it could be the smallest step in the world. You can inch forward, but as long as you're having that motion, and even if you're failing every time, you're moving in the right direction. And I think that's a huge takeaway for everybody, whether you're in the corporate world, business, whether you're an athlete trying to make a team. I don't really care, every area of life, whether you're trying to correct your marriage or whatever.
Yeah.
It's what little steps are you willing to take to move forward, that they make all the difference in the world. You talked about so much, and I'll put this in some of the notes, but just the fact of being totally committed, having this attitude of gratitude, allowing yourself to dream big, but the way you do that is through constant learning and support, finding great mentors around you, having the humility to ask for help, even on this what you may think is the smallest thing in the world or the biggest thing in the world,
right.
but being able to ask for help, being curious, and be willing to ask that question, like, what if?
Right.
What if I did this?
Right.
Connecting with your legacy, making a difference in the world, doing what you're meant to do, looking at what people could look at Arbonne and be like, all she does is sell products. And that's not at all what you do.
Right.
That is not at all what you do. That is one thing that you do
right.
as part of this business, which drives the business.
Right.
But it's one thing, and your purpose is much greater. And the fact that you've connected with that, I think, is one of the most powerful things I've heard of. We all go through our days and we're like, yes, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and this is the routine that we go through. Right. And we don't always take that step back to be like, let me connect with the real purpose of why I'm doing this, why I'm writing those 6 things at night, because I know if I do those tomorrow morning, right. this day is going to be out of control, good, and I'm going to be in a good place, great attitude, right?
Yep.
I could go on, but it's so awesome to hear your story and call you a friend and be able to spend time with you and tell your story as well. Before I ask the final question, if people want to connect with you, social media, whatever, how would they get in touch with Tarrah Brandsma?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. I have my own, my business website, which is tarrahbrandsma.arbonne.com, and then people can always reach me via email, tbrandsma@msn.com, and then Facebook. It's always tricky because my maiden name's in there, but Tarrah Dreiling Brandsma on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. But
okay.
I feel like I changed up those names, so I don't even know what those are half the time.
Exactly. And I'll put all links to all those sites and social media stuff in the notes, so you can connect with Tarrah if you like, ask her questions or buy products and do all that stuff. One last question before we wrap up. If you had one piece of advice to pass along, and I want you thinking about your children in this circumstance, but one piece of advice that you could pass along to them on kind of your last day that would help them stand out from the rest, what would it be?
Yeah, it would probably be, for that thing that stirs up inside of you, don't put that flame out. And no matter how many people will tell you it's not possible, or tell you you're crazy, or, want to push you, back down, don't let them do that. And continue to stay true to yourself, and just walk in faith that, if you have been inspired with a vision, to continue to follow it out, and know that, there's gonna be times it's easy and times it's not, and just to keep pressing on towards that ultimate goal. And so that would be the piece of advice I would have.
That's great advice. Tarrah Brandsma, everybody. Thanks so much, Tarrah.
Thank you. This was awesome.